Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Now, let me show you my new baby. If you watched Mac Break Weekly earlier today, you saw me fondling the Mac Pro, and I owe a real debt of gratitude to a guy named Ed Ingber. He is a ham and a watcher, a viewer. He owns a brick. He bought this Mac Pro. I think they went on sale like, what, December 19th? But if you didn't get up at midnight and order it, you still don't have it. Only people who ordered in the first few hours before 3 a.m. were able to get their Mac Pros before the end of the year. The rest of us, and that included me, had to wait. Now, Ed bought his, he says at 1 a.m., and decided he didn't want it. He thought, you know, as great as the Mac Pro looks to be, it's very expensive. I just need an iMac. So he sent me an email, said, would you like to take my Mac Pro, buy it for me at cost? And I said, yes. So that's how we have one so early. A lot of you are still waiting for your Mac Pro. We all saw the Apple reveal. In fact, who could forget Phil Schiller, the director of marketing at Apple, showing off this amazing extruded aluminum cylinder back at the Worldwide Developers Conference in June and saying, can't innovate my ass. Well, it is innovative. In fact, this is a very interesting design. At first, and I have to say I was one of many people who kind of poo-pooed it, saying, oh, they're just showing off. But I got to tell you, they're not. This design is actually very practical. Now, this is a very dense, thick, extruded aluminum, so, of course, this conducts. And then there's only one fan, and it's a big fan in the bottom that blows air up through a hollow core, a thermal core in the middle, and then out the top. So the key on the new Mac Pro is that you have to keep the bottom clear and the top clear. Now, I've exercised this thing like crazy. I've made it do the hardest work I've made any computer do, and it never even broke a sweat. It literally did not get hot. It's also dead silent. So quiet that when I first hooked up an external drive, I said, what is that whining sound? Is my Mac Pro... Oh, it's the hard drive inside the external drive. This thing is silent. So a beautiful but very functional design. They highlighted the fact that when you turn it, it lights up the connectors. And let's take a look at the connectors. You'll see 4 USB 3 connectors. There are 6 Thunderbolt 2 connectors, 2 gigabit Ethernet ports, of course, audio in and out, and then the usual, HDMI port, on-off switch, and power plug. That's it. This is an... Oh, there's one more switch, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to take a chance. You can also... Well, I'll have to disconnect everything, but you can lift this off. I should do that, shouldn't I? I'll do it at the end. I'll tell you what, because I'll have to disconnect everything. But you can lift this off like Darth Vader's helmet and see inside it, and you see what a beautiful design this is. No moving parts. It's one of the reasons it's so quiet. SSD drives, dual PCI Express buses. That means they're very, very fast. The ROM is removable and upgradable, one of the few things you can upgrade in here. Although Other World Computing, when they took it apart, and I fixed it too, noted that the CPU, the Xeon CPU in here, was socketed. So in theory, you can upgrade the CPU at some point down the road. You can also, in theory, upgrade the dual video cards in here. Now, the starting configuration is a whopping $3,000. And by the way, that doesn't include mouse, monitor, keyboard, just the cylinder, a plug, and 2 black Apple stickers. $3,000. You may be spending even more. You'll see the next level up, the 6-way Intel Xeon E5, running at 3.5 gigahertz is $4,000 with 16 gigs of RAM, and you can go on up. You're probably going to want to load it up because the kind of people who buy this are not so price sensitive. They're professionals who are editing video or rendering 3D objects, doing high-end Photoshop, something that they need a lot of speed because, frankly, this is overkill for almost everybody else. If you're doing spreadsheets, if you're doing simple Photoshop, you don't need this. And the fact that it's so expensive perhaps makes it prohibitive in terms of something that you'd want to have on your desk. You'll note how small it is. You really don't get a sense of it until you're in person. In fact, it's easy to lift. Oh, I shouldn't have flipped that switch. Well, as long as we've done that and rebooted the machine, let's unplug it and I can show you what's inside here. I flipped this unlock switch inadvertently, and so now I can just lift this off, and you can see, here's the fan, here's the thermal core going through. The CPU is underneath in here. It's got dual GPUs. There's one. There's the other on top of that. I believe that's the hard drive. This is the RAM on standard sticks there. and the connectors. The reason there's so many connectors, well, there's really very little you can upgrade in here. You're absolutely going to want to get, for instance, an external Thunderbolt 2 drive. You're going to want to get a 4K monitor. It's fast enough to support that. But here's the problem. If you buy it right now, there are very few good Thunderbolt 2 choices. In fact, as far as I can tell, there's one or two. Almost all of them are coming soon. You don't want to get a Thunderbolt 1 drive. This is, for instance, a Buffalo drive with a Thunderbolt interface, but it's not very fast. It's a slow drive inside. And really, this is basically a USB 3 device that they've added a Thunderbolt interface to. It's in all likelihood, to keep up with the speed on this, you're going to want to get Thunderbolt 2 SSD drives. Those are going to cost you more than the computer itself. Furthermore, if you really want to take advantage of the 4K display, there's only one in the Apple Store right now. That's the Sharp for $3,500. There's an Asus out there as well that supports the faster refresh rates you want. That's also $3,000. The inexpensive 4K displays we're seeing from companies like Lenovo at CES are only 30 hertz refresh rate, and I do not recommend them. So $3,000 to start for the Mac Pro, another $3,000 for a single 30-inch monitor, and you're probably going to want a RAID enclosure with SSD or very fast hard drives on the Thunderbolt 2. That's going to set you back at least $1,500. Suddenly you realize this is a $10,000 computer. And most people don't need it, but if you're one of the people who does, it is a wonderful thing. I have to say, I don't need it, but I brought it home, I fired it up, started playing with it, and I fell in love immediately. This is a computer with personality. Apple is the best at making computers that just make you kind of love them. I love the design. I was a little skeptical at first. If you need a computer with this kind of power and you know who you are, there is nothing, no PC, nothing that can compare to the brand new 2013 Mac Pro. Pros and cons. The pros, of course, the design. The industrial design is gorgeous, well thought out, and highly functional, I have to say. It really does the job. It's also extraordinarily fast. When I did the benchmarks on the SSD, I saw speeds that I'd never seen before. It reads, according to the Black Magic Disk benchmark, it reads these internal SSDs at very close to a gigabyte per second. Imagine transferring data at a gigabyte per second. Unbelievable. The cons, well, you're going to need some very expensive peripherals. In fact, the whole thing is just ridiculously expensive. However, I've got to say, if you're the person who needs this kind of speed, or you've got enough money and you really have an appreciation for design, there's no question in my mind this is a buy. I like this better than I thought. This is the Mac Pro 2013. Apple's just knocked this one out of the park.